I'm excited for the opportunity to get to preach. Clearly, you guys missed the memo. That's why there's a good-sized crowd here. You didn't realize it was my turn, or you probably would have stayed home. But I am humbled by the opportunity. I'm excited for the opportunity. I'm just going to get into the Word, if you guys are okay with that. And I'm going to read quite a bit of Scripture to you, but that's what should be done, right? We're here for the Word, not my opinion. So for those of you that like to take notes, though, the message title is The Other Brother. We'll be reading out of Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 32. You're like, oh, goodness, that's a lot of Scripture. Yes, it is. But it is all necessary in order to get to the point that we are trying to make, or the point that Jesus was trying to make. I think that on top of the fact that it is his word, it is Jesus's word within that word. So I think that it should hold a high precedence in the way that we believe and how important it is to our lives. So, are you guys ready? Cool. Luke 15, starting in verse 11. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older brother was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him.' 'My son,' said the father, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and now is found.'" Whew. Just reading it's pretty awesome, right? Now, you guys know that this didn't actually happen. He's not recounting something that actually happened, but it is a parable or a story. And it is, what's cool about a parable and a story is it is a representation. It is a representation of characters which represent us. So I love a good story. You can ask Brittany. The shows that get my attention, the video games that I play that I love to play the most are the ones that have good story. And Jesus just told us a wonderful story that has an amazing ending. These characters represent each and every one of us. So I thought that it would be important for us to highlight these characters this morning. Are you guys okay with that? Can we look at these characters and take a more in-depth, so we have a more in-depth understanding of what is being said here by Jesus? Yeah, cool. I'm going to whether you want to or not. So you can get on board and make this go quicker, or you can just sit there and be quiet, and I'll drag it on because I can talk about the Bible for days. The first character in the story is the one that everyone is most familiar with. This is probably the one that most people would identify with if they had to pick a character, and that is the prodigal son, right? The prodigal son knew that what his father had established and worked so hard to give to his children was good and it was right, but still he decided to take what he thought that he deserved and go out on his own. He went away from the Father's plan and his provision and took his portion so that he could go and make his own way. Most would say that this is who they would be, or that this was the biggest portion of their life. They were the prodigal son. We've tried to go out on our own, but we're humbled quickly and realize, some more quickly than others, right? We realize pretty quick that our portion doesn't go nearly as far on its own as it does when it has been blessed by the Father. Amen? Sure, I mean, we could be referring to finances, right? Because that's what this kid took. He took the portion of the estate that he thought was his, that he deserved, but he didn't yet, but that's okay. He took that and he went into the world and he did things that a lot of us probably have done. It says prostitutes. I hope we haven't done that part. But if you have, you know what? That's okay. You're more in line with the prodigal son than the rest of us. Good job. You can identify better. There it is. You're welcome, Alan. See, it's not just about money, okay? It's about the gifts and the talents that he's given us as well. Most of us use those things that we've been given, whether it's money, gifts, or talents, for self-gain rather than kingdom building. Plenty of people in this room have been blessed financially, and that's great. That's a wonderful blessing to have. But with that blessing comes a lot of responsibility. The ministry cannot go forward without financial giving. It just can't. And I'm not here to preach on tithes and offerings. That's not the point of this. But you do have an important role to play. The reason you have been blessed in that way is to make sure that his kingdom is funded and able to go out and reach those that aren't so blessed, that don't have access like we do. But there are also those in this room that have gifts and talents that are meant to be used to build up the kingdom. So what are you doing with those gifts? What are you doing with those talents that you've been blessed with? And Angie would kill me if I didn't take this opportunity to advertise the fact that we have plenty of opportunities here in Trinity Fellowship for you to get involved. We need people for our social media team. We've got a lot of teenagers doing stuff that some adults should be doing because they're willing to serve. We need youth leaders. We've got some amazing ones, but we are growing. And with growth means we need more, right? Angie has 1,000 people on her staff, but she would always tell you that she needs more. It's true. We're always looking for good people that are willing to serve on those teams. Because generally speaking, we love to look and see what the church is doing, whether it's in the community or for the people of the congregation. But there is a number that says only 10% of the congregation are doing 90% of the work. That means that 90% of the congregation is doing the other 10%, and that 10% is being done with a bad attitude most of the time. They can't believe they have to do it. You're like, I didn't realize it was that kind of message. But what's sad is that's the mentality we have. We hate the fact that we have to serve. We have to use these things that we've been given to bring glory back to God or to build up the kingdom. But we're quick to take ownership of what the church is doing in the community without actually participating in what the church is doing. You want the recognition without any of the action. I'm not trying to make you mad. I'm just pretty good at it naturally. That's what I'm here for. But maybe that feeling of anger, some of you are like, you're looking right at me. I promise you, I'm not looking at any individual. I'm looking out. And if you feel like my eyes are on you, it's not intentional. But maybe that is conviction, something telling you, hey, I probably should be serving. If I am serving, but I'm doing it with a bad attitude, maybe my attitude should change. I hope that you find yourself willing to use those talents that you've been blessed with, willing to use those gifts that you have been given to bring glory back to his name, to build up the kingdom, because that is why he gave them to you in the first place. If you're willing to go out into the world and use them to make a living, but you're not willing to do what's eternal, then you've missed it. I'll leave you alone. Because I could stay here, but that's not the point of this message. That was just an opportunity to let you know. But it really isn't the main point of my message. But I do hope it gets you thinking about where you are in your relationship with God and what he has done for you and your ability to get involved with the church in a healthy way and with a good attitude. So the next character that we see here is the Father. And he's a good father, amen? You're like, good, we're on to something different. I don't want you to yell at me anymore, Pastor Brad. You see, the prodigal went out and squandered everything that the father had worked so hard to give him. And what did the father do? When I look at this story, I know it's just a story, but it does represent us, right? I look at this story and I think that as a father, I hope that I would do exactly what this father did. You see, the prodigal went out and squandered everything, did away with everything that he thought he deserved. And when he returned home, he had an expectation. I'm sure a lot of us have had that expectation. But he didn't get what he thought he deserved coming home or what he had expected. Instead, the prodigal was received, he was redeemed and reclaimed. Not only was he received by the Father, but his Father ran to him. We tend to think that when we mess up, we aren't worthy to approach the Father, to receive forgiveness. But when we take the first step towards him or towards coming home, he comes running to meet us where we are. Not only does he meet us, but according to the story, he wraps us up in his arms and kisses us. It's almost as if the love that he had for us never left, even though we had. You see, the Father received him, but that's not where it ended. He didn't hold it over his head. He redeemed him. The Son said, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. You see, he had an expectation to come back and just be a slave because he thought that was better than what he was doing on his own. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. I understand this thought process. I've been very self-critical. I've thought very little of myself growing up, and I've thought this thought to myself about my own dad. I've done a lot of things. We talked about it yesterday at Addie's birthday party. I've done a lot of things that if we were to look at it from the outside, or if we were anyone but my dad, could say, yeah, you're not worthy to be called his son. You see, the Father saw the guilt and the shame that the Son was feeling. He saw the pain and the dirt that he had been living in. And he said, quick, this is cool, bring the best robe that I have and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. He saw his son in his worst, and he decided to give him his best. He took what this life had done to his son and replaced it with the best that he had to offer in an instant without hesitation. I think that's pretty cool. But if you're like me, sometimes this is where we get stuck, right? We can't really understand this way of thinking. We allow our self-evaluation of worth to outweigh what he says and has done to prove that we are worth everything to him. Can I share a personal story with you guys? Are you ready for a personal story? Don't worry, Brittany. It's not going to embarrass you today. It's not about you. It ain't about you. It's about me. Growing up, I said I was pretty jacked up. I was a handful. Most of my teachers were ready to hand me off to the next one. That's kind of like what we talked about yesterday. Miss Angie graduated me early. She didn't want me back there anymore. She said, "You're the next 4 youth pastors' job." So I probably ran them off too. I don't know. It might have happened. But despite me being ornery and all these things that are said about me, I was actually pretty talented at a lot of things, okay? One of them being running people off. I was good at that. But in school, I really didn't have to try very hard. And it was sad. Heather got mad at me all the time. She had to study and do all this stuff, and she would get good grades. She made A's, but I wouldn't try at all. And I'd go in, I could review a study guide once, and I'd get an A on the test. Anyone else like that? No? I'm rare. Seriously, I didn't have to try. I could look it over once, I'd get an A. Homework, I would finish at school during the next class when my teacher was teaching. I didn't need to hear what they said. I'd be fine as long as I could look it over. It's almost like I had a photographic memory. It was probably pretty close, which is why I don't retain all the information that we're supposed to learn in school, because I didn't care. But I was like, I'll have knowledge bulimia. I'll go in and I'll study really hard, take all this in, I'll throw it up on a test, and I'll forget it. Boom. Knowledge bulimia. I was also very good at video games. You're like, that's not a very good skill to have. You know what? It really is with students now as a youth pastor. No one thought it was going to be good, but it is a good skill to have. And you know, my youth pastor was Brian Clark. I had 4, like I said, but Brian Clark is the one that I call my youth pastor because I had him for several years, not just like 6 months. So I loved Brian, but Brian, I don't know if you guys know him, he was here for a while, was very, very competitive, but he wasn't as good as me at most things. So what did he do? He wanted to win. He put me on every team that he was ever on, whether it was sports related or video game related. He wanted to win. He put me on the team. You're like, you're really building yourself up. I could quote almost any movie anytime. Like, I could quote it with the best of them. You could tell me the characters in a movie or the names of the actors, and I could tell you what movie they were in. I don't know where that comes into play lifelong goals-wise, but if you ever have a question about movies, I got you. It's not a great skill to have, I know. But the thing that I found the most self-worth in was sports. It was something that I was good at, and I was above good at. I tried my hand at music for a little bit, but I had a sibling that was very, very good in the music department and vocally, and so I didn't try very long. I did trumpet in 7th grade. Yeah. So in middle school, I played trumpet. We had 60 students in the class, and in that, I still didn't try very hard, and I made the top 5. I made honor band the one year I played music. You remember that? I did. I played trumpet. And then the next year, they put me in band. That was junior high. And I went in there, and they're like, "Where's your instrument?" I was like, "We gave it back to the people. I wasn't planning to be in band this year." So they're like, "Well, you can't play without an instrument." I was like, "I know. I don't know why y'all put me in here. What do you want me to do? I'm going to move on." So they dropped me out of that. I went and played football instead. But sports, those were my thing. I was really good. I had the opportunity to play in college, and I probably could have played football or baseball. But I chose baseball because it was more of a passion of mine than the others. I had coaches telling me all the time that if I tried at all, if I would have given any effort at all above what was just basic level, showing up to practice in games, I could have easily made the pros. I even had one coach that told me, with the very little effort that I put in, the natural ability that I had, I could easily go pro as a pitcher. That's not good for an egotistical kid or teenager. I was like, sweet, I can keep doing what I'm doing. I don't have to be any better. I can skate by and I can make lots of money. Sounded nice to me. I could do just about anything I set my mind to and do it better than most that put a lot of work into it. You're like, you're bragging on yourself a lot this morning. Well, everyone rags on me all the time. I finally got the microphone. Deal with it. Just kidding. But I really could. I'm not trying to brag. I'm just trying to set up a story and prove a point for you guys. I was trying to find my identity and worth while also trying to gain the approval of my dad. I just wanted him to be proud of me. And it's not that he wasn't. It's not a shot at him. But our relationship wasn't as open in communication when it came to touchy-feeling emotional stuff. So he wasn't sitting there saying, I love you, boy, and hitting me and sending me on the way. It wasn't like that. And it wasn't just, I'm proud of you. But you could tell in the things that he said, just the way he would show up. He would be there. So it's not that lacked. It's just, I thought as a young boy that I needed to do these things. I needed to excel in things to gain his approval, to make him be proud of me. So when I got hurt and I realized that those things weren't a part of who I was anymore, and I was struggling with the identity crisis of what kind of person am I going to be? I was struggling with who am I? What am I? What am I going to do? My dad and I finally did have that conversation. And ultimately it came down to him saying, without any of those things, you're my son and I am proud of you. And over the years, he also let me know that I wasn't called to be a pro baseball player. Wasn't that I wasn't capable. It's just he knew a long time before that I was called to be a pastor. So even though I was worried about these worldly things, he had a plan and an understanding for me that didn't revolve around any of that. My worth wasn't in what I was able to do, especially something that wasn't long term. So let's get back to the parable. The father redeemed his son, but not only that, he then reclaimed him. He said, "For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." He said, "For this son of mine." I think that's important. Because once again, the son was doubting. He was coming back with an expectation that I'm not going to be his son anymore, but I'd settle for slave. I'd settle for worker of the field. But he said the first thing back to him, "For this son of mine, my child has been revived and recovered." This is all that the father ever wanted to happen after his child went off in the first place. No matter how far you have gone away from the Father, and no matter what you have done, the moment that you decide to come home, the moment that you take steps toward Him, He's just waiting for the opportunity to come meet you where you are. He will run to you. He's going to receive you. He's going to redeem you and reclaim you back into His family. That's a good, good Father. I have a pretty good one, but He's better. Worship team, if you guys want to come back out. We're not done yet. I just want to give them plenty of time to get set up, and so you guys can get your distractions out of the way. Because there's one other character in this story, or this parable, and you'll notice that it's the title of my message today. There's been some good stuff so far, and we probably could stop there, but we're not going to. And the reason why we're not going to stop is because I think the majority of the individuals here, you're not the prodigal anymore. You're here. You've been received. You've been redeemed. You've been reclaimed. you're here. The majority of the people are going to fall into this category. The one you think that this story isn't really about. The one that's kind of been forgotten, is in the background. And I have to tell you this because I can't have only half of you mad at me when you leave. I need everybody to have an opportunity. I only speak so often. You see, this brother thought he did everything right. He followed the rules. He did what he was told. Never tried to go off on his own or do anything outside of the plan of his father. If you're getting baptized, you guys can head on out and get ready. I know you probably want to hear the end of this, but it'll be online for you later. So some of you are asking, if he did all those things, then what is wrong with him, right? What's wrong with just doing what is required, what is asked of us? The thing that is the issue for the other brother is the mindset that he had when doing it. He was doing these things for the wrong reason. You see, he had anger in his heart. And did you guys know that you can do the right thing for the wrong reason? When it's laid out for you, the rewards in the end, you'll do your checklist of things to make sure that you get that. But are you happy about doing it? Or are you doing it because you have to? See, the other brother, he did it because he had to. And if we do the right things for the wrong reason, it doesn't make us right. Last year, I did a sermon. It took me about 4 months to get through it. A sermon series, sorry, not just one sermon. That would be a long time to sit through one sermon. But I did a sermon series in youth about the Sermon on the Mount. And we called it Hill Talk, real conversations that Jesus had with his followers. And one of the underlying messages that we learn in the Sermon on the Mount, the main thing that Jesus was trying to get us to understand is it's not about what we do necessarily. It's about how we do it. It's about the condition of your heart. If your heart is in the right place, then you'll start doing the right things for the right reasons. It's no longer I have to do this. It's I get to do this because it's going to help others that are in that have to mindset understand that they get to as well. And what's beautiful about a parable is the characters in the story can be representations of different parts of our lives. Yes, you could be the prodigal that has returned home. But you can also be the other brother if you've been around long enough. I think that most of us are in this stage of life. We're the other brother. And what I mean by that is you do your best to live by his word. That's good. Or maybe it's at least the parts of the Bible that we like the most or that go along with the narrative that we're currently in. That could be most of us. You know the Bible well enough. You know what it says so that you can quote scriptures, not passages probably, but scriptures out of context to prove your point so that you can prove that you are more holy than those around you and that they should respect you. The other brother wasn't able to rejoice in the fact that his brother had finally come home. All he could do was see that the father was blessing the sinner and not doing it for him, or at least not doing anything extra for him. He couldn't believe that after all this time of being faithful and living under this provision and never wanting for anything, never breaking any of the rules, doing everything expected of him, that he never received his reward, but instead was expected to share the reward with the brother that had messed up. see, the other brother, he had anger in his heart, and it kept him from realizing that he had everything that he has ever needed. He would never go without. That everything that was his father's was already his. He didn't focus on the things that he had, but instead he focused on the things that he didn't or wasn't given. You know what that was? He wasn't given a cow to celebrate with his friends. And as ridiculous as that sounds, honestly, most people struggle with this. The same issue. You're like, I don't care about a cow. I do. I love beef. Just saying. But once again, a parable is a representation of things. This is a spiritual matter, not a physical. You see, you are living under the provision of God. He gives you everything that you could ever need. You will never go without. But when you see a fellow brother or sister receiving a blessing, instead of rejoicing with them, you get bitter towards God and towards them. You look at others and see that their prayers are being answered, so why aren't yours? For those of you that this is you, you know. It's been building up a bitterness in you for a long time. Why is everyone else getting theirs? I've done my checklist of Christianity. My prayers aren't being answered. I didn't win the lottery this month. You say, how could God bless her or him? Does he not know what they do when they're not at church? Yeah, he does. He sees them just like he sees you and what you do when you're not here. For this person, you can't be satisfied with the fact that you already have it all, or at least everything that matters. You want to make sure someone you have deemed unfit doesn't get to share in the reward with you. It should just be yours. You're like, it was really good until the last thing, Pastor Brad. No, I'm mad. I'm upset because I've thought these things, and that's not fair. I get it. I've been there. A lot of us have that mentality, and not everybody does. But regardless of which of the children you are in this story, the main message stays the same. What is the condition of your heart? Where are you at? Are you broken but ready to come home? If that's you, I want you to stand up and I want you to throw both your hands up in the air and surrender. When I see this image right here, it reminds me of a child ready to be picked up by their father. For some of you, you are the prodigal, and that's what I'm saying. If that's you, but you're feeling like I did, unworthy, like there's nothing you could do to redeem yourself, you're right. The only thing that you can do is ask for the gift that he has already given you. You got to take that first step towards coming home, and then he's going to run the rest of the way to you. So if that's you, I want you to stand up. Throw those hands up in surrender. You don't have to come down here. I don't care. If you're nervous about what others are looking at, you know what? They're probably the other brother. It's like, oh, don't you stand up. I know where you were at last night. Dixon's still screaming your name. It's fine. But for the others, you know, the secondary characters of this story, those of you that have been faithful, you've come and you've done your checklist of things, but you do it because you have to rather than the idea that you get to. or your heart has become bitter of doing the same thing over and over again, but seeing others receive blessings, and you feel like your stuff isn't being answered, it's for you too. The altars are open. You're welcome to come pray. The worship team is going to play. Just encourage you to pray. Reflect on the word and let it change you. Don't just show up, but take his word to heart. Internalize it, changing you from the inside out so that you can go out and change others. Amen. Worship team.